Good morning, Fantasy Pointers. We're back. It's time for Monday grades from week 9. So let me get this out of the way first. It's my belief we are on a path toward the NFL making further adjustments to the rule book to boost scoring. And perhaps that could come in the form of stopping the clock after first down, similar to the college game. So where's the proof? 17 out of 24 quarterbacks in week 9, that's 71%, pass for fewer than 250 yards, and 12 of them, or half, threw for fewer than 200 yards. And the parallel is 17 out of 24 NFL teams scored 21 points or fewer. All right, let's get into the grades. So Justin Fields, he gets the A plus this week. 17 out of 28, 61%. He only threw for 123 yards. That's okay. 3 touchdowns, 106.7 passer rating, only averaged 4.4 yards per attempt. Again, that's okay. Like I said previously, I actually like this version of Fields where he takes what the defense gives him. But he ran for 178 yards in a touchdown, a 61-yard run that was, I mean, he's just zooming down the field where he outruns Xavier Howard and his 4.3 40 time to the end zone. So 868.0 of that production, that was on designed runs. So it's 8.5 yards per carry. And I've heard a lot of opinions passed around that the reason that Fields is playing so well is because the Bears and Matt Eberflus, they're allowing him to run. Well, that's right in a way, and it's wrong in another. So or it's misleading. So they are letting him run more. They're designing some runs for him, but the scrambling, they're taking the handcuffs off of him and letting him scramble when he sees an opening. And there's a pretty big difference between the two. So he's actually dropping back quite a bit. And he on scrambles this week he scrambled 7 times for 110 yards and a touchdown. That's 15.7 yards per carry. That's 62% of his rushing yardage. They lost that game 35-32. All right, the A this week, it goes. I mean, there's really nobody else. Really, if you look at the entire quarterback landscape this week, there were two quarterbacks that really stood out above everyone else. It was Fields and it was Tua Tagovailoa in the same game. So he was 21 out of 30, 70%, 302 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, a 135.7 passer rating, 10.1 yards per attempt. During the first half, he was 11 out of 13, 85%, 162 yards, the 1 touchdown, 144.2 passer rating, 12.5 yards per attempt. In the third quarter, he was 9 out of 14, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, 134.2, 9.4 yards per attempt. It was during the fourth quarter, with the offense trying to grind out the clock, that they stalled, and Tagovailoa only completed 1 out of 4 for 9 yards. It was game script. Otherwise, he would have gone for close to 400 in this game. He did pick up a 47-yard DPI during the fourth quarter that extended one of the drives. Two of their final 3 drives. It was kind of weird in a close game like this that two of their final 3 drives ended in failed fourth down conversion attempts within field goal range. I wouldn't give an A to the coaching staff, but they are 6-3, and they let Chicago begin a drive with 2:38 on the clock, and but the Bears, they're often, and when they were only up by 3, so I mean the Bears could have come down, but the Bears, they're just not built for passing emphasis requirements yet. Fields only attempted one more pass than Chicago ran and scrambled during their 2 fourth quarter drives when they were down by 3. And like I said, the Dolphins won 35-32. The A plus at running back, I mean, it is a singular performance here. I added an A to the running backs. I didn't want to take that away from the position, but really there was none other that deserved even an A. But the A plus, out of nowhere, the most disappointing running back this year, Joe Mixon. 22 carries, 153 yards, 4 touchdowns. He averaged 7 yards per carry, 7 first downs, 50% of his carries were either a touchdown or a first down. He had 7 carries of 10 plus. That's 32%. 20 touchdown yards. That's 13%. He added 458 one through the air on 5 targets. They won that game 42-21. Really pulled their foot off the gas there at the end. And we'll get into that later. So the A that I just crammed in there is for Derrick Henry. He didn't get the 30 carries. I actually wish they would have done that, but I'm assuming he's a little beat up from last week. And he's I know there was an injury that was reported at, I believe it was foot or ankle, and he was questionable, but he's not missing this game. So he went 17 carries, 115 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's 6.8 yards per carry. He only had 3 first downs, but that's 29% of his carries were either a touchdown or a first. He had only had 2 runs of 10 plus. I do believe at least 1 or 2 were called back due to penalty. But still, it stands at 12% of his carries for 10 plus. He had only 5 touchdown yards, but scored 2 touchdowns. Who cares? And 0 targets in the passing game. It wasn't really the type of King Henry performance that we see, but the offense it really struggled. Malik Willis isn't ready, but he's being forced into action. All right, moving on. The A plus at receiver. There's only one guy here, and I'm sure that there's somebody else that stands out, and we'll get to him later. But Tyreek Hill gets the A plus. So 25 routes, 8 targets. He caught 7 for 143 yards and a touchdown. He had 6 first downs. That means 100% of his catches either went for a touchdown or a first down. He averaged 5.72 yards per route run. Nobody else was even close. He averaged 20.4 yards per reception and posted a perfect 158.3 targeted passer rating. And he drew, like I said earlier, the 33-yard DPI, defensive pass interference, from Kendall Vilder, who was injured on the play. I mean, he just shredded Chicago this week. They had nothing for him, and they won that game. So Justin Jefferson, very inconsistent throughout the game, but overall 42 routes, 13 targets. He caught 7 for 115 and a touchdown, 5 first downs. That's 86% touchdown or first. He averaged 2.74 yards per route run, 16.4 yards per reception, a 109.5 target passer rating. And actually there was one throw that was interception, and I did not formulate that into the targeted passer rating, so it's actually lower, and so it's not a 109.5. They won that game 20-17, but man, it wasn't pretty. Dallas Goedert. Now he is the man. Well, AJ Brown had a decent game. Nothing against AJ. It was a lot of cover 2. That's not usually his thing. Lovie Smith his defense is built to take away guys like AJ Brown, but Dallas Goedert was, I mean, in addition to Jalen Hurts, and then Miles Sanders also played well, but I do believe Dallas Goedert was the number one reason why Philadelphia avoided a out of nowhere close game upset to Houston. So 30 routes, 9 targets, 8 catches, 100 yards, 1 touchdown. He had 6 first downs. That's 88% touchdown or first, 3.33 yards per route run, 12.5 yards per reception, a near perfect 150 targeted passer rating. That's why we get 3 receivers this week with A's. And, all 3 were just absolutely vital to their team's victories. Getting down to the B's. So Geno Smith, definitely a B here, and the closest quarterback to an A. 26 out of 34, 76%. He had 275 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Okay, 1 interception. It was a pick 6. I'm sure he would love to get that one back because his line would be so much better without it. His passer ratings was at 106.9, 8.1 yards per reception. He also added 6 carries for 38 yards on the ground. Geno Smith is the starter for the Seahawks moving forward, and there's no question that he's going to be the starter next year. If they go out and draft a quarterback, it'll be a later round one. I do not see them replacing him anytime soon. He's been one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league this year. Patrick Mahomes. So it took him 175 attempts, but he had a decent game. He's borderline B here. 43 out of 68 for 63%. He threw for 446 yards because the Chiefs couldn't do anything elsewhere. He did throw a touchdown, did have an interception, 80.9 passer rating, only 6.6 yards per attempt. What really pushed him into, I know the yardage is nice, but what really pushed him into a solid B was he was 663, one on the ground, and had a successful 2-point rushing attempt. The Chiefs combined for 13 carries and 14 yards from their running backs. 7 receivers caught at least 2, and 4 of them caught at least 6 receptions. Mahomes started overtime 5 out of 5 for 63 yards. During regulation, inside the red zone, he was 5 out of 7, 41 yards, a touchdown, 114, 1 on the ground, and the 2-point run that I mentioned. But during overtime, he was 1 out of 5 for 2 yards. Man, the Chiefs won 20-17, but it was on a boring 28-yard field goal in overtime. That wasn't the easiest game to watch. There was some offense at least. It wasn't, one of the most terrible games of the week, but you just see the Chiefs and you think you're going to see an offensive smorgasbord. All right, Travis Etienne, kid is really coming into his own. Now that he's got the whole backfield to himself. 28 carries, 109 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's only 3.9 yards per attempt, but he led his team to the victory. And he was responsible for most of it. 6 first downs, that's 29%, either touchdown or first. 3 runs of 10 plus. He only had 6 touchdown yards, but that's 2 touchdowns. If you had him in your DFS lineups, you were definitely thankful. 217-0 receiving on 2 targets. They won that game 27-20. Austin Eckler, he gets the second B at running back. And it wasn't pretty either. So 14-47, 1 on the ground. That's 3.6. It's 0 rushing first downs. That's 7% on his 1 touchdown. Gave him 7% of his carries, either a touchdown or first. He had 0 runs of 10 plus. He had 2 touchdown yards. That's 4% on the ground. But he added 724, 1 receiving on 8 targets. And he did have another 37-yard touchdown through the air called back. And he did lose a fumble. So overall, though, it balances out. He was basically the offense for the Chargers here. So they won that game. And he gets the B grade. All right. So the other wide receiver that some may assume would get an A is Devontae Adams. I mean, and I totally get it. We'll get into the really finer details later on, but overall 36 routes, 17 targets. He caught 10 for 146, 2 touchdowns. He had 4 first downs. That gives him 60% of his catches went for a touchdown or first. He had 4.06 yards per route run. That was second best on so far this week. 14.6 yards per reception, had a 126.1 targeted passer rating. They lost that game, and that is the reason why he's down here as a B. And like I said, I'll explain a little bit later. So the key to the victory for the Chiefs was Travis Kelsey, and he was on the field for 63 routes. He had 17 targets. He caught 10 for 106 yards. He had 6 first downs. That's 60%. He didn't have any touchdowns. So 60% of his catches went for a first down. He had another catch called back, a 25-yarder. He only averaged 1.68 yards per route run, but that was the defining factor in that game. Is everything was limited and reduced in efficiency, but he did average 10.6 yards per reception. He had a 77.1 targeted passer rating because his 1 interception a target that was towards him. They won that game 20-17 in overtime. Man, things get real ugly after that, folks. And I'll start with the most significant second half improvements. And I had to cheat here since he didn't even play in the first half. So Baker Mayfield replaced PJ Walker for the second half. During the second half, he went 14 out of 20 for 70%, 155 yards, 2 touchdowns, 126 passer rating, 7.8 yards per attempt. And he led the Panthers to outscore the Bengals 21-7 during the second half. I mean, he's definitely going to be the starter. I mean, I don't see any way they could put PJ Walker back in there after what he did last week. Yeah, they lost that game 42-21. And no other second half performance outside of the A's and B's from a quarterback is worth mentioning. None of them. They all declined in the second half, whether game script or just poor play. All right, the one running back that I could summon up to be a second half performer was Kenneth Walker, but it wasn't even a second half. It was a fourth quarter performance. So during the first 3 quarters, he had 14 carries, 46 yards, averaged 3.3 per attempt, 2 first downs, 2 runs of 10 plus. He caught 3 out of 20 on 4 targets. The fourth was interception. That was the pick 6. But during the fourth quarter, he ran 12 times for 63 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's 5.3 yards per attempt. That's a 37% improvement in yards per carry, and 4 first downs. So that's 50% of his carries went for a touchdown or first, 2 runs of 10 plus, 6 touchdown yards, 8%. He gutted out an overall excellent performance on the road here. Kenneth Walker he's moving up my dynasty board. He's so good, and he just grinds those yards. Just watching him pushing defenders just for an extra yard and a half. I mean, just so impressive. I really this was a good rookie class between Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Damian Pierce. Brian Robinson's been. He looked good the first couple of weeks, but still, overall, this is a good rookie, really good rookie running back class. And hopefully we'll get a few of these. It's because it's so deep as well. We'll get a few of the other guys stepping up eventually. It's still early. So the one wide receiver that I could, outside of the A's and B's, that I could put in this category is Terrace Marshall. So during the first half, he ran 9 routes. He 0-0-0'd on 1 target. Second half, 18 routes. He caught 3 passes, 53 yards and a touchdown on 6 targets. He averaged 2.94 yards per route run, 17.7 yards per reception, a 120.1 targeted passer rating. It was I'm liking what I'm seeing from Terrace Marshall recently. All right, now we get down to the D's. So we got Derek Carr, and yeah, I'll explain the Davante Adams thing. So 21 out of 36, completed 58% of his passes for 259 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and 99.2 passer rating, 7.2 yards per attempt. I mean, nothing egregiously bad other than the 58% completion percentage. Of course, it's Derek Carr, so we got nothing on the ground. So here's the thing. He devoted 47% of his throws to Davante Adams. And during the first half, when Carr led the Raiders to a 20-10 lead, that targeting, which was 9 throws, led to 9 catches, 146 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, everything was going. I mean, it was working. Josh Jacobs didn't have his game this week, but then Carr decided to up his second half targeting to Adams a further 20%. Adams caught 1 throw for 0 yards on 8 targets. And the Raiders were outscored 17-0 during the second half. Yeah, they lost 27-20. They should have taken that game. And it just kind of defines their season. And Darren Waller, where are you, man? Like, you're sitting around watching your team By the time you get back, your team's already out of playoff contention. So who even cares? Take the rest of the year off. Malik Willis. And again, this is unfair. This kid's not ready. He needs more time. A couple of games of practicing with the team during the season isn't enough for a kid that comes from a group of five school. I mean, I know it's an independent, but Liberty's going to a group of five school next year. It's not like they're trying to get into a Power Five program. They know they're a group of five program, even though they're really good this year. But Malik Willis, he just needs more time. And so I'm not putting him in the F category. So he was 5 out of 16. He was the face plant of the week last week. He's not getting it 2 weeks in a row. That's not fair. He was thrust into this. 5 out of 16, 31 yards, 80 yards through the air. He didn't throw a touchdown and an interception, had a 49 passer rating and a 5.0 yards per attempt, but he did add 40 yards on the ground on 8 attempts. That saves him mostly from an F. And, they lost, as I've gone over several times now. Sam Ellinger, same thing. 15 out of 29, 52%. He had 103 total yards. Man, this is really hurting Michael Pittman. If you have him on your roster and you don't want to have him anywhere near your DFS lineups, that's for sure. It's just killing Pittman's. I mean, he's a bench until we see better play from Ellinger. And then, of course, he has an easier matchup this week. But, yeah, 2 interceptions, had a 45.6 passer rating, 3.6 yards per attempt. That's brutal, but he did add 539.0 rushing. And, look, he's an underexperienced quarterback facing the underexperienced quarterback serial killer known as Bill Belichick, and he did it in Foxborough. He does not deserve an F. This is understandable. It's expected. It's a D. So, yeah, they lost that game. Aaron Rodgers. Okay. Whew, man, I swear Vegas should start taking bets on whether Rodgers hangs up his cleats before this season is done. I'm not saying he's going to, but Green Bay dropped to 3-6 by losing to the Lions 15-9. This was the worst game of the week by far. And Aaron Rodgers was 23 out of 43 for 53% completion percentage, 291 yards. But I mean, he threw. Okay, he's not been terrible. Like he's actually made some good throws this year. But I'm not saying that's why he may hang up his cleats. It's that he is still making good throws, and there's no one around to catch him other than Alan Lazard, especially now that Romeo Doubs looks like high ankle sprain is the best case scenario there. So 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions against Detroit, 53.5. One of those I understand. It was a great play by Aiden Hutchinson, but the other two, 53.5 passer rating, 6.8 yards per attempt. Like I said, he's making some throws. It was his 4 carries for 40 yards on the ground that kept me from putting him down as an F. Devonta Smith. So he ran 29 routes, 2 targets, 222.0, 1 first down. He averaged 0.75 yards per route run, 11.0 yards per reception. He has just been terrible against cover 2 during his career. And this was just another one of those. And he only 2 targets, but he couldn't get any separation. And that's going to be a problem. He needs to, if Philadelphia wants to win a Super Bowl, they need more consistency out of Devonta, and he's young. I know he'll get there, but it's still they're wanting to win the Super Bowl this year. They won that game 29-17. So now we get down to the F grades. None of these are going to shock anyone. PJ Walker, 3 out of 10, 9 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 0 passer rating. I don't even know how. I don't think the human brain can even comprehend what a 0 passer rating. I mean, that's just, I got no words for it. 0.9 yards per attempt. He made Baker Mayfield look like a franchise cornerstone. They went into the half down 35-0. Matthew Stafford, 13 out of 27, 48%. We all watched that game, and it was brutal. So 165 yards passing, 48% completion percentage. I may not have said that. 1 touchdown, an 80 passer rating. Yeah, I mean, who cares? 6.1 yards per attempt. 33% of Stafford's targeted throws, 62% of his completions, 77% of his yardage, and his 1 touchdown all went to Cooper Kupp. 42% of his passing yardage was gained on Kupp's 69-yard touchdown. They lost 16-13, dropping to 3-5. Maybe one of the worst defending Super Bowl champion teams I've ever seen in my lifetime. Chiefs, and I already mentioned this. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Isaiah Pacheco, 9 carries, 10 yards, 1.1 yards per attempt rushing, 0 first downs, 0 runs of 10 plus. All 9 of their carries were for 3 yards or less. They did add 2 catches for 18 yards on 3 targets. This is all combined. I will say Pacheco did have a 12-yard run called back. Yeah, that's not going to keep them from getting an F. Both of them. The rookie faceplant, though, of the week. He's a 3-time award winner, is Drake London. This was his spot. This is where he should have stepped out and done something for us. 20 routes, 7 targets. He caught 2 for 27, 2 first downs, 1.35 yards per route run, 13.5 yards per reception. I mean, it's 2 catches. And 43.2 targeted passer rating. And he also lost a fumble. Man, he's been a big-time flop. And it wasn't the best game from Mariota. He's had better games prior, but this one was still. I watched this game, and it was brutal for London. He did not look good. He looked lost, and they lost that game. That's it. That's Monday grades, and enjoy Monday Night Football. We'll be back same time next week.